Hey folks, Sean here, and today what I want to talk to you about is my favorite way to get more of an ROI out of your product development process. And it starts with finding what I refer to as the bottleneck. So if you're unfamiliar with this as a concept, you can think of a bottleneck almost if you're like going over a bridge and you have to go through a toll. Usually it goes from many lanes down to a few lanes as you go over said bridge. Now that is kind of visually how you can think of what is a bottleneck, right? It goes from high traffic area to a low traffic area or vice versa, as in slowing the process down considerably because you are funneling what was moving much more quickly or in higher volume into what's ultimately going to move a lot more slowly or much lower volume. Now, that is a good visual kind of understanding of what a bottleneck is, but to understand what it means from a process perspective, the same thing happens when your customer may be trying to do something much more quickly, but something in that process, any given step, like going through a toll of a bridge, for example, is slowing that process down. They may want to get from A to B much faster, but they can't because something's preventing them from doing that, and that thing that's preventing them from doing that is the bottleneck. So if you're trying to level up your product development process, a great way to be able to do that would be to, through research with your customer, better understand and find these bottlenecks in their process that are slowing them down. Now, in order to be able to do that, as I mentioned, you need to do the research. So you need to speak with them and you need to talk to them about not what they want necessarily in the future, but what's preventing them from getting what they want right now. Focus on historically what they've tried to do, what's worked and what hasn't worked. That'll give you a much better idea for where they need the most help and what may be the biggest bottleneck in their process to date. So if you start with that approach, it's going to enable you to find areas of opportunity to turn what I refer to is problems worth solving into solutions worth building. So let's talk more detail about what happens when you help them make this transformation. Now, to me, by far the most exciting part about following a process like this is it enables you to calculate the return on investment built into the process. And that's something that doesn't happen a whole lot in terms of the clients that I work with, trying to help them level up their product development processes. What gets built is often not based on ROI or customer value or even value for the business, which sounds weird, but it happens a whole lot. So what I love about this process is it's straightforward in going from the customer's problem, looking for the best area of opportunity to try to improve their situation and quantify it along the way. That's going to be important as we figure out how much value ultimately building that solution to eliminate said bottleneck is going to provide for them. Because if that number is high enough, that's going to enable your product or your company or both to be able to generate more value as well too, in terms of if your customer is getting a high enough return on investment in terms of that new solution that you're providing for them in the form of your product by eliminating this bottleneck, that may give you the ability to generate more revenue through your product, which is going to increase the value of the product and the company as well. So that's the most exciting aspect of this. And that's essentially how it happens. So if you go from understanding what the bottleneck is, which again, just to summarize, is figuring out the type of progress your customer is trying to make, understanding what is specifically slowing them down and trying to make that progress, as in they want to move faster, but they can't. Why can't they? You need to figure out what that is, and that's where you're going to laser focus. But you also, at the same time, need to understand what the impact of them not being able to move faster is. This is where you start to get into the ability to quantify it. So if they tell you, well, we could move 10 times faster if we eliminated this step or solved something related to this step, that's great. But what outcome is that going to enable them to achieve? If you can ultimately figure out what that outcome is going to enable them to be able to achieve, like, are they going to reduce how much time gets invested into this process across an entire team or the organization by 90%? If so, that leads to a huge number as you start to quantify how much we're talking about in terms of what you would need to pay that team in order to do and how much time they're going to get back. Or maybe it enables them to charge more, right? Whatever it is, you want to drive towards the successful outcome. Eliminating that bottleneck is going to enable them to be able to achieve. So if you found one, that's great, but don't stop there. You have to keep going until you get greater context for understanding what eliminating that bottleneck is going to mean for them, as in what transformation are you going to help them be able to make. Once you know that, you'll have a better understanding for the value that they will get if you prioritize building this solution. So like I said before, if you move from what we've uncovered in eliminating this bottleneck as a problem worth solving into a solution worth building, you want to understand what type of outcome that's going to enable them to achieve, and what type of return on investment they're going to get as part of this process. And if you understand that, you understand how to quantify the value the customer is going to receive if you provide them with that solution through your product. And if you do that as well too, and that number is high enough, that may give you an opportunity to generate more revenue through your product because of how much value you're providing them, which makes your product more value and your company more valuable. So this is one strategy that I use on a regular basis, which can provide pretty immediate results in terms of how to level up your product development process and build return on investment into the process itself. Hey folks, Sean here. Thanks for watching my content. I hope you got value out of it. If you did, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel so you can be notified when more content like this becomes available. And in the comment section below, I'd love to hear from you. What questions do you have about implementing a strategy like this to level up your product development process?